Okay, hello and welcome back to the Deep Dive. It's June 12th, 2025. You sent us some really interesting, quite stark articles and notes recently. They give us a look into the latest moves in Russia's, well, ongoing crackdown on dissent. And it's not easy reading, definitely not. But what's striking is this mix of the very serious reality and elements of almost absurdity.
Absolutely. The material highlights two cases in particular, very recent ones, just this week, actually. But the key thing, really, is seeing how they fit into this bigger, much longer pattern of silencing opposition. It feels like it's accelerating.
Right. So our mission today is to, dive into this material you sent, pull out the key insights, the important details. We want to help you understand what's happening, why now, and crucially, why it matters. It is grim stuff, no doubt, but sometimes acknowledging those almost bizarre aspects the sources point out makes the core truth even clearer.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in with the first big story here. Leonid Volkov, June 11th. A Russian military court in Moscow, the Moscow Second Western District Military Court specifically hands down this huge sentence. 18 years.
18 years, yeah. It's a staggering number. And as the reports stress, in absentia,
Mm.
which is key. Volkov hasn't been in Russia since, 2019? He's living in Lithuania. So they're not physically arresting him, but that sentence, well, it sends a powerful message.
Exactly. And Volkov, you'll know from the sources, was a major figure in Alexei Navalny's movement. A strategist, led the Anti-Corruption Foundation, the FBK, for a couple of years. And the charges, this is where it starts to feel, well, a bit surreal, reading through the material. 40 counts.
40, yeah. It's quite the list. The sources break it down things like justifying terrorism, which seems tied to his FBK work after they called it extremist. Then organizing and financing an extremist group, again, the FBK. But then you get charges like rehabilitating Nazism and spreading fake news about the war in Ukraine.
And that last one feels almost tacked on, but just as serious, creating a non-governmental organization that violated citizens' rights. It really does sound like they just threw the kitchen sink at him, charge-wise.
It has that feel, doesn't it?
Well,
The material you shared pretty consistently frames these as politically motivated. It's clearly aimed at dismantling Navalny's network and punishing anyone associated with it. And the groundwork was already there, right? FBK declared extremist in 2021. Volkov himself put on the terrorist and extremist list in 2022. So designations basically opened the door for these kinds of broad charges.
and it wasn't just the 18 years. There's also a fine, 2 million rubles, about $25,000 US. And then maybe the most head-scratching penalty, banned from using the internet for 10 years, which, according to the sources, led to this moment of dark humor from Volkov on social media. He apparently posted something like, let me find the quote. "Oh no, they banned me from the internet for 10 years, but I've already been using it. Damn, whatever am I going to do?"
Yeah, that reaction, that kind of sarcasm, but it really captures the absurdity, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Banning someone abroad from the internet, it's practically unenforceable. But it also highlights the real intent behind it, the attempt to criminalize him, delegitimize him, wherever he might be.
Right. Okay, so that's the Volkov situation. But the material also focuses on another recent case, Lev Shlosberg.
Yes, Lev Shlosberg. He's a well-known figure in the Yabloko opposition party, a veteran politician. And importantly, he's based in Pskov, inside Russia. So his situation is quite different from Volkov's in that immediate sense.
And what did the sources say happened with him?
He was placed under house arrest for 2 months, initially. It's not a sentence yet. It's a pre-trial measure while they investigate, possibly leading to a trial, and the alleged crime. The reports say it's discrediting the Russian army, specifically for calling for ceasefire in the war with Ukraine.
Wow. Calling for peace is discrediting the army. That seems, well, an extreme interpretation. And like Volkov, the sources really frame this as another political hit job.
Then it really brings us to the bigger picture presented in the material you sent. These aren't just random events happening in isolation. It's part of this long campaign against dissent.
Yeah, one source described it as a crackdown longer than a Tolstoy novel, which felt apt. And it definitely seems like the pressure has ramped up, especially since Navalny's death earlier this year.
Absolutely. The material points to other examples fitting the pattern just recently. Navalny's own lawyers, remember, got sentenced back in January up to 5.5 years. Why? For being part of an extremist group, basically for doing their jobs. And then in April, 4 journalists got similar sentences, again for working with Navalny's banned organization.
So it's not just the top figures like Volkov, it's systematic. Anyone connected seems to be a target. The sources use this analogy of a Kremlin's checklist. If you were involved with FBK, you might be on it.
The message the regime is sending couldn't be much clearer, really.
Yeah.
Public opposition, any kind of meaningful dissent will be treated as a crime. And the legal system is the tool they're using, whether you're inside Russia or trying to exert influence from outside.
And the timing. The sources often connect this intensification back to the war in Ukraine, now in its fourth year. It's described as almost a convenient excuse to tighten the screws even further, using these national security type laws.
Exactly. Those laws, like discrediting the military or spreading fake news, are described in the material as deliberately vague. They basically give the authorities a blank check, don't they? Almost anything critical could be twisted to fit. Shlosberg calling for a ceasefire being labeled discrediting is, well, a perfect example of that kind of overreach.
And looking at Volkov in exile versus Schlossberg inside Russia really shows the different ways control is exercised. Volkov can tweet sarcastic comments about an internet ban because, well, he's physically out of reach for now.
But for Shlosberg, stuck under house arrest in Swath, it's immediate. It's real. It might not be a jail cell, but house arrest, as the material describes it, is like a psychological cage. It's constant restriction, a constant reminder Big Brother is watching. He can't move, can't speak publicly. He's effectively silenced within Russia.
The historical backdrop mentioned in the sources is important too, isn't it? This isn't new. Opposition in Russia has faced pressure since Putin came to power back in 2000. Control just kept tightening. Navalny's approach, using the internet, FBK exposing corruption, that was obviously a major challenge they decided to crush, hence the extremist label. Even older parties like Yabloko, Schlossberg's party, they've been pushed further and further to the margins.
Right, and when those official channels get squeezed, people are forced into riskier forms of opposition, which makes them more vulnerable to these kinds of attacks.
So let's bring it back to you, the listener. The material asks this directly. Why should these cases matter? They might seem far away.
Well, fundamentally, it's about free speech. It's about the right to disagree with your government. What we're seeing here is a state using its own laws to criminalize basic political activity, even calls for peace.
And it's not just about Volkov or Schlossberg. It's the message it sends to everyone else, that chilling effect. Making such extreme examples, it tells ordinary Russians, keep your head down, stay quiet.
Precisely. It fosters fear. It discourages organizing, speaking out, even associating with anyone deemed critical. It aims to silence potentially huge swathes of the population.
And we have to talk about the absurdity again, because the sources really lean into it. It makes the grim reality stick. Volkov's internet ban, one report called it like banning a fish from swimming. It's just logically nonsensical.
Or the charges themselves, rehabilitating Nazism against someone known for fighting corruption. And that NGO charge, violating citizens' rights. It feels so generic, like, let's just add this one too. It makes you wonder, as the reports suggest, if they're just making it up as they go along.
Schlossberg's charge, too, calling for a ceasefire, discredits the army. It's highlighted as such clear overreach. It basically criminalizes any view on the war that isn't the official government line. It feels, frankly, improvised.
Yeah, these aspects feel almost like something out of Kafka or Orwell. It's that Cold War time warp feeling the reports mention, where logic gets twisted entirely for political purposes.
But, and the material stresses this, underneath the bizarre surface is the very serious reality of rights being systematically crushed.
Absolutely. And thinking about the future for these two, the material offers some thoughts.
For Volkov, with that 18-year sentence hanging over him in Lithuania.
Right now, it's mainly symbolic, right? It brands him a criminal in Russia's eyes, complicates his international life. He's safe in Lithuania for now, as the reports cautiously put it. But they also rightly remind us the Kremlin has shown it has a long reach. Exiles aren't always safe. We only need to think of Navalny himself. So Volkov's defiance, even his jokes, probably come with an awareness of those risks, that internet ban. Yeah, probably the least of his actual worries.
And Schlossberg, under house arrest back in Stockholm.
That's about immediate control. Silencing him now. He can't campaign, can't participate publicly. The sources suggest this 2-month arrest is likely just the start. A trial seems probable. And given the track record in these political cases, sadly, a guilty verdict is also highly likely, potentially leading to prison time.
The material also points out the global implications here. This isn't just Russia's internal business.
No, definitely not. When a major power uses its legal system like this, it sends a terrible signal to other authoritarian regimes. It's almost like providing a playbook. Here's how you can suppress dissent under the guise of law. It also puts pressure on countries hosting exiles, like Lithuania, and it normalizes this kind of behavior, which the reports warned is a slippery slope for human rights globally.
But the sources also find a counter-narrative, right? The resilience aspect.
Yes, and that's really important not to lose sight of. Despite everything, the sentences, the charges, the risks, these individuals aren't just folding. The reports emphasize they're still fighting. Volkov's still tweeting, "Internet ban be damned," as one piece put it. Shlosberg is still advocating for peace, even from his living room under arrest. That resilience, that willingness to stand up when the odds are so incredibly stacked against you.
Yeah.
That's a huge part of the story.
And it's crucial, I think, to remember the human side the sources touch on. These aren't just abstract political figures. They're people with families, lives, making enormous sacrifices.
Absolutely. And their fight, you feel, is very much tied into Navalny's legacy now. His death was obviously a massive blow, but it seems to have, for many, strengthened their resolve to keep fighting for that different vision for Russia. A future where you can criticize, where you can call for peace without being branded a criminal. They're keeping that possibility alive, however difficult it seems.
So, wrapping up this deep dive based on the material you sent us, we've seen this intensifying crackdown, starkly illustrated by the cases against Volkov and Schlossberg, extreme charges, sometimes absurd ones, and heavy penalties or restrictions.
Yeah, it's a clear pattern. The regime using vague laws, especially around the war, and its legal system to silence opposition and create this broad chilling effect, both inside Russia and targeting those abroad.
But, as the sources also made sure to highlight, there's this persistent spirit of resilience, defiance from people like Volkov and Schlossberg, refusing to be completely silenced by the system.
Which leaves us with a final thought, perhaps, building on the sources. What does it really mean for the world when a major power uses its legal apparatus so blatantly to criminalize dissent? Or maybe, how does digging into these specific stories, the serious and the strangely absurd parts, affect how you think about information, truth, and freedom of speech? Not just over there, but everywhere.
Definitely a lot to think about there. Thanks again for providing the sources that allowed us to do this deep dive. We hope this exploration was useful for you.